Claire Bennett is my name. Emma, my twin sister, was born 4 minutes before me. And in some way, those 4 minutes changed everything in the eyes of our parents, Margaret and Robert Bennett. We grew up on a tiny organic farm near Cannon Beach, Oregon. Everyone in town knew your name and your grandparents, and it was the type of location where the salty ocean breeze blew through the trees. Simple, seasonal, and honest was life. Not always fair, though. Emma has always been the source of joy in my life. She received the extra scoop of ice cream at dinner, the newest dolls, and the nicer outfits. Mom would drop everything to hold her as she wept. Mom gave me a serviette and remarked, "You're a tough one, Claire," when I fell and scraped my knee. "You'll be all right." It didn't matter, I told myself. Being tough was a compliment, I told myself. However, I felt in my heart that I was learning how to carry things that no one ever saw. The gap grew as we grew older. I stayed behind to assist on the farm, while Emma was sent to New York to study fashion design, completely paid, of course. I labeled honey jars, harvested vegetables throughout the day, and studied accounting online at night. I once questioned Mom why I was supposed to stay, and Emma was allowed to leave so far away. She gave me a look that conveyed the message perfectly. "Claire, you can look after yourself. Emma requires us more." I thought about that line for years. Every time I repaired the irrigation, calculated the farm's budget, or repaired a rip in my used trousers, it replayed in my head. On the other side, Emma's Instagram was full of expensive bags, rooftop parties, and posts with the remark, "Manifesting abundance." I uploaded pictures of squash with butternuts. Her credit card was her father's. Every time I opened Excel on my used laptop, it wheezed. I never complained, though, because I genuinely thought that people who plant thoughtfully, water regularly, and wait patiently would eventually be rewarded by life. I had no idea that the seeds I had sown were going to sprout. I completed my online accounting degree with honors by the time Emma was finishing her second year in New York. Silently. There was no grand family celebration or graduation cap. I taped my certificate to the inside of my closet after printing it from an email. It was springtime. I had taken up freelance work managing the books for the local co-op, and I was knee-deep in spreadsheets while the apple trees on our family farm were just starting to bloom. When I told Dad, he hardly raised his head from his newspaper. "Well done," he said, turning the page. After passing a single design lesson, Emma received a champagne toast and a new camera. I didn't focus on that, though. I had begun to save money. I was saving money consistently and quietly. I set aside money from every co-op check and every side job I took to aid local farmers with their taxes. I dreamed of starting a small consulting and bookkeeping business in my hometown. Not much. Only mine. Emma, on the other hand, had spent all of her internship funds on weekend getaways to Miami and investment crystals, so she called her mother each month to request more money. And without question, they sent it each month. I occasionally questioned whether they even remembered that I shared the same property. Mom rushed in with that too sweet voice I knew all too well one Sunday morning when I was clipping basil in the greenhouse. "Claire, honey," she whispered as she brushed the dirt off my sleeve. "Could you please join us for supper this evening? Your sister is going to deliver some wonderful news." I knew the answer already, so I nodded. Emma was getting married. As I had anticipated, she stood up with a grape-sized diamond flashing from her freshly manicured palm as the family gathered around the old oak table that evening. Her fiancé was a company founder with a trust fund and a bright grin. A coastal chic wedding was what they had in mind in Italy. There were gasps, tears, and applause, mostly from Mom. "And we'll be flying out next month to start venue tours, thanks to Mom and Dad," Emma said after a dramatic pause. I blinked. "You're paying for the wedding?" I asked softly, attempting to maintain a steady tone. Mom grinned with pride. "Obviously! This is a moment that will only come around once," I continued, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "You told me you couldn't even help me with a business loan." Dad cleared his throat. "Emma, however, is getting married. You're still struggling to figure things out. I'm still learning things. For years, I had been saving. Did all kinds of odd jobs. Created a client list from the ground up. Emma had just received a wire transfer and chosen a hashtag for her wedding. I'm not sure if I was more shocked by the dismissal or if it stung more. However, I silently vowed to myself at that very moment they were free to continue applauding. I would create a future devoid of it. My grandma, June Bennett, the mother of my dad, called me 2 weeks after that supper. The only family member who ever saw me in person was her. "I've been meaning to tell you something, Claire," she replied quietly. "Your grandfather and I opened savings accounts for you and Emma years ago. We set aside the same amounts for you and Emma back then, for your future, whether it be business, college, or whatever else you require." For a moment, I stopped breathing. "I didn't know what a savings account was. We gave your parents the money to manage until you turned 25, she added. "Isn't that supposed to happen soon? Next month was my birthday." With my heart racing, I thanked her and hung up. I questioned Dad about it that evening. He glanced over his glasses, blinked, and remarked, "Oh, that?" Emma urgently needed her apartment, her tuition, and her travel. You've always gotten by without it." With a trembling voice, I added, "But it was mine too, half of it." Dad gave a shrug. "Claire, it's only money. You're resourceful. You will discover the solution." For the first time in months, I went to my room and started crying. Not only for the cash, but also for the message it conveys. Emma's aspirations were worthwhile. My own were worth observing from afar. I kept their actions a secret from Grandma. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. Rather, I returned to my work. Every night, I worked on refining my client reports, creating bids, and creating the branding for Bennett Ledger Services, the consulting business I would eventually start. I created the logo myself. Easy, tidy, expert. A week later, a tiny food wholesaler that served nearby farms throughout Oregon sent me an email. They offered a 6-month contract that was remote, flexible, and paid better than anything I had ever received previously. Plus, they needed full-time bookkeeping support. In less than a minute, I agreed. It wasn't Italy. It wasn't towers of champagne. However, it was genuine. I owned it. Mom called the same day I signed the contract. When she was going to say something unfair, her voice always sounded sugary sweet. "Your sister has a small favor to ask, Claire, honey." I took a slow seat. "Her wedding arrangements have gone a little over budget. We reasoned that since you haven't gotten married yet and aren't spending your portion of the family budget." I felt my heart freeze. I responded bluntly, "You want me to give Emma my inheritance?" With haste, Mom responded, "It's not about taking. The key is sharing. She is your sister. This is her big moment." I chuckled. Not because it was amusing, because it was so predictable, so vacuous. "No," I replied. "That money wasn't mine in the first place, was it? You made up your mind about that already." A pause occurred. Then Mom yelled, "Claire, don't be resentful. Emma is deserving of joy. She also put in a lot of effort." I glanced at the shabby calendar next to my desk. It was the late evenings that captivated me, the invoices that were kept. To meet deadlines, I skipped meals. The customers I had acquired with no assistance. And I spoke calmly and clearly. She can finance her dream in the same manner that I have had to finance mine. I hung up after that. The phone stopped working 2 days after I refused to part with the money. "Please refrain from making any phone calls. Don't text." Even Mom's passive-aggressive emails that start with "just checking in" were absent. It ought to have been serene. However, it didn't. The storm then arrived. It began with a post on Facebook. A picture of Emma at a bridal fitting wearing a white dress with the following caption, "Looking forward to the big day." Love always triumphs, even in situations where others are not supportive. I remained silent. I didn't enjoy it. I continued to scroll. However, many took notice. I got a note from an old classmate. "Is everything all right?" Emma mentioned losing family over jealousy in a post that I saw. I didn't respond. My cousin Olivia called that weekend. "Claire, your mother is informing people that you won't be attending the wedding because you're upset that Emma is getting married before anyone else." I let out a laugh this time. "Is that now the story?" I inquired. She even said, "You're withholding resources out of spite, Grandma June." It hurt. I didn't want Grandma to be disappointed in her own son and daughter-in-law, so I hadn't told her anything. They were using her as a weapon now. That's when I realized they wouldn't settle for disappointment. They intended to change the story so that I appeared to be the antagonist. I went to open the cafe early the following morning. Tuesday was a calm day. The small store was filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread, and the hills were still covered in mist. However, I discovered something adhered to the door when I turned the chalkboard sign to open. A flyer, an enlarged picture of Emma and her fiancé that reads, "Come celebrate with us tonight. Help us give Emma the wedding she deserves by contributing to the Bennett Wedding fundraiser." I gaped at it in shock. At the bottom, $150 per visitor is the suggested donation. They were raising money for Emma. I gave these folks free budget advice and coffee in the same town. That night, a typical Miss S. "Claire, dear," said Dunlap, a retired schoolteacher, softly. "Is it true that you're not assisting your sister because of some old sibling rivalry?" That was it. I sat behind the counter crying, locked the door, and closed the register early that evening. They weren't merely requesting cash. They portrayed me as vicious while requesting my silence. I gave Grandma June a call. The second ring caught her attention. "Claire?" I told her everything. The money. The phone call was received. The post on Facebook. The fundraising event. There was a long silence when I finished. Then she whispered, "I sensed something wasn't quite right. Your grandfather's account will be managed by me. And for your own peace of mind, Claire, don't you give them $1 more than you already have." I sobbed quietly as I thanked her. I posted my own statement that evening. Just a picture of me holding my coffee behind the Willow Brews counter. Captioned, "Some people are born with assistance. We all begin with nothing." With or without praise, I am proud of the house and business I have built. No names, no charges, just the facts. I was shocked when the comments started to come in. "Claire, the first see you. You've always put in a lot of effort. Happy to have you as a friend and accountant. We support those who create, not those who plead." The story wasn't being written about me for the first time. I wrote it myself. I discovered a fresh 1-star rating on Willow Brews's Google page when I visited the cafe 3 days after I uploaded the picture. It said, "A cruel owner, resentful of her relatives. Pretending to be a small-town hero, she declined to assist with her sister's wedding. I wouldn't back this establishment once more," the signature said. An honest local. However, I was certain of who it was. I didn't answer, not initially. But then there was more. A few sporadic reviews with ambiguous critiques about the stingy energy, the unwelcoming atmosphere, and the fact that some people just need to let go of the past. My coffee shop? I had established my small haven, bean by bean, customer by customer, and now it was being silently assailed by my own relatives. It was more than just online, too. A few patrons began behaving oddly. "You know, generosity starts at home," a woman stated loudly to her buddy after ordering an espresso and turning to face me. I smiled as I served her. However, I felt as though I was internally burning. Nathan came by that evening while I was wrapping up. He sat across from me, watching me repeatedly wipe off the counter as if it had done something wrong, and brought a croissant from a local bakery. "Are you all right?" Gently, he inquired. "No," I replied, and I didn't act like I was for once. "Everything is being poisoned by them. My name, my company, and unless I tell the truth, no one will know it." Nathan gave a nod. "Then speak, according to your terms." That evening, I wrote a post. Not inactive, not ambiguous. However, it is evident. I composed, "Here's the reality for my neighbors, friends, and anybody else who has been wondering why my name has been in the news lately." I put a lot of effort into growing and safeguarding the college fund that my grandparents provided me years ago. I used it to build a life, work, get scholarships, and study. Despite having the same opportunities, my sister Emma made different decisions. My parents are now requesting that I give her what I have worked so hard to build, not because I am cruel, but rather because I achieved success on my own. I won't say I'm sorry for defending my hard-earned gains. Furthermore, I refuse to be silenced by guilt or by those who want me to correct what they themselves refuse to teach. The foundation of this cafe was the idea that hard work counts, along with late nights and early mornings. I'd be delighted to have you if you agree with it. I understand if you don't. However, I will no longer allow a fabricated narrative to define me. Before posting, I read it 5 times. After that, I switched off my phone and went to sleep. The notifications rolled in like a wave the following morning. Positive remarks, private correspondence, text message from long-lost college pals. At last, I'm really happy you made a statement. People the first didn't even know wrote stuff like, I appreciate you getting up. The same thing was done to me by my sister. You're not by yourself. The truth is always important. Naturally, though, not everyone was content. My mother called me that afternoon. Claire, she continued in a brittle, harsh voice, what the devil did you post? I didn't wince. I was honest. This family is being humiliated by you. No, I quietly said. I simply no longer hide. She ended the call. Suddenly, the division was irreversible. However, another thing also occurred. I read your post, customers began saying as they entered. I appreciate what you stated. A mural representing perseverance and overcoming adversity was provided by a local artist to be painted for the cafe. You helped me remember that boundaries aren't selfish, stated a woman who had never uttered more than a few words to me. They are essential, and I understood perhaps my family was still with me. Perhaps I had just discovered a new one, among those who selected me for my truth rather than my blood, right here in this small town and cafe. I got an unexpected invitation a week after my post went up. I received a call from my Aunt Lorraine, my dad's younger sister and the only member of the extended family who had subtly offered assistance throughout the years. I understand that things have been stressful, Claire, she added softly, but this Saturday is your grandfather's birthday. The entire family will be attending. Additionally, I believe you ought to as well. I paused. She went on, you don't owe anyone anything, but perhaps it's time they see who you've become instead of just what they've been told. I inhaled deeply. All right, I replied. I'll be there. I brought Grandpa's favorite dessert, a homemade cherry pie, and wore a simple olive green outfit that Saturday night. I informed Nathan that I needed to face them alone, even though he offered to come. Every talk slowed the moment I entered the house. Everybody looked. Emma was there, of course, looking like the center of the universe while sipping champagne and wearing a gaudy designer outfit. Beside her, my parents appeared as though nothing had occurred. However, Aunt Lorraine was the first to welcome me. I'm proud of you, she whispered as she gave me a cozy embrace. I only needed that to continue walking. The long oak table was prepared for dinner, which consisted of casseroles, roast, and awkward silence. Despite the strain, Grandpa sat at the head and grinned. Emma cleared her throat midway through the meal. She started swirling her wine and said, I just wanted to convey that I've been extremely hurt lately by a person I believe to be family. Let's get started. She publicly humiliated us. With her gaze fixed on me, she went on. She misrepresented the facts and gave the impression that I was a conceited brat. We all know that I have put in a lot of work, though. My plate and my fork made a gentle clinking sound. Slowly, I raised my gaze. You'd like to start this discussion right away? I asked in a composed tone. Emma crossed her arms. Why not? You have already exposed our private issues to the entire community. I put down my serviette. I was honest. Nobody in this family wanted to hear the truth. Dad moved apprehensively. Mom's mouth clenched. Reality? My mom lost her temper. You exaggerated all the time. We provided you with the same chances as Emma. No, you didn't. I cut in. You left me to survive because you said I was strong. You gave her everything because you said she needed help. And now you want to penalize me for using what I had to make something? Emma laughed. So jealousy is the issue here? No, I firmly answered. It has to do with ownership. I earned my stability, my business, and my life, and you made me the bad guy when I wouldn't give it to you. There was silence in the room. Grandpa even glanced up at that moment and muttered, She's not wrong. My mom's face went white. He went on to say, I saw that girl work through every family dinner shift at the old general store. She kept every dime she could. She was also assisting me with inventory counting and fence repair while the rest of you were on vacation. His eyes were warm as he glanced at me. Claire, you've created something genuine, and you have my utmost admiration. My eyes filled with tears, but I blinked them away. Emma got to her feet suddenly. I don't have to endure this. Then don't, I advised. I did not come here to plead. I arrived to wrap up this chapter. I went to my parents. I no longer feel furious. I'm simply finished. I'm over battling for room in a family that never accommodated me. After picking up my coat, I turned to give Grandpa a cheek kiss. Happy birthday. Then, with my dignity intact and the pie still on the table, I left the room. Long after closing time, I sat by myself at the cafe the night after Grandpa's birthday supper. The chairs were flipped over on tables, the lights were low, and the refrigerator's soft hum was the only sound. The street lamps flickered in the misty night as I sipped a cup of chamomile tea and gazed out the window. I should have been ecstatic because I had finally expressed all I had been holding inside for years. But I just felt exhausted. An hour later, Nathan discovered me there. At first, he remained silent. His fingers barely touched mine as he sat next to me. At last, he muttered, "You did the difficult thing," I said. "I don't feel strong." "You're not required to. You simply must continue." We sat silently for a long time, and something changed within me in that silence. I came to the realization that I had waited for validation from others, particularly my parents, for most of my life. However, I was done waiting now. I was creating a life that didn't require their consent. I declined several local interviews over the viral article that week. I didn't want my story to become gossip. I immersed myself back into Willow Brews instead. The menu was redesigned. For college students who wanted a cozy place to study, I organized free coffee mornings. When we introduced Pay What You Can Fridays, the community's reaction was tremendous. I was restocking the coffee beans behind the counter one evening when a teenage girl entered the room with a crumpled notebook. "Are you Claire?" With shyness, she inquired. "Yes, I am. My teacher shared your post with us about advocating for oneself. It's part of our journaling assignment," she explained. "Writing about someone who inspired us is required of us." Startled, I blinked. "And you choose me?" She gave a nod. "Because you prevented your voice from being stolen." "That's how I want to be." My throat constricted. I gestured towards a stool and said, "Come sit. I'll prepare some hot cocoa for us both." No prize or apology could ever fully capture the significance of that moment. I experienced the repercussions of choosing truth for the first time. I did not seek retribution. I'm not doing this for the sake of spectacle, but for my own and perhaps another person's healing. Nathan and I sat on our small balcony with a view of the lake later that evening. Like strewn diamonds, the stars glinted off the lake. He remarked, "I've been thinking, what if we go on the trip you've always wanted to go on? The slow one. The kind that doesn't require hourly planning." I grinned. "Are you referring to the coastal road trip?" "Indeed. The open road, you, me, and no expectations." I leaned in close to him. "I believe it's time. Because when you quit seeking love from people who won't give it to you, you begin to make room for genuine love for yourself, for your future, and for the life you decide to create, regardless of where you came from." The leaves surrounding Whispering Lake had turned crimson and gold after 3 months. With the arrival of autumn came a serenity I hadn't experienced in years. I did go on that road trip with Nathan. No major plans. There were only twisting roads, used bookshops, coffee in the middle of the night at the petrol station, and a silence that heals without the need for words. I discovered that it had been days since I had given my parents any thought, somewhere between Oregon and Northern California. The type of letter with my mother's loopy calligraphy on the envelope was in the mailbox when we returned. "Claire, we are aware of the ways in which we have let you down. It was painful to read your post, but perhaps it was necessary. Counseling has begun between your father and me. We're attempting to comprehend why we allowed our personal anxieties to cause friction between our daughters. We're not pleading for pardon, simply the opportunity to listen, if and when you're prepared." I read it more than once. I refrained from crying. I no longer experienced the same intense pain I formerly did when they let me down. Rather, I experienced compassion. From afar, I took a while to respond. I didn't have to respond immediately. Because I at last realized what I had been pursuing my entire life. I wasn't damaged. It wasn't difficult to love me. My family didn't know how to view me when I was born. And no one could take that away from me now that I could see myself, fully and clearly. Willow Brews was doing quite well. We had developed into a small haven, not just a cafe. People stayed because they were comfortable and came in for coffee. On Sundays, I led writing circles. Nathan led the game nights. I considered selling the ancient bakery oven. We restarted it, and I began baking with eager high school students from the area. I noticed my reflection in the bakery's glass one Saturday when we were packing fresh muffins into a box for the nearby shelter. Not worn out, not imperceptible, Claire alone, surrounded by people who admired her, standing strong in a place she created. I strolled down to the lake's edge that evening as I locked up. The breeze rustled the branches like a gentle applause, and the moonlight danced across the waves. And I realized I've been waiting for this moment the entire time, not their blessing, but my own tranquility. Share this story if it made you think of your own journey or someone you care about who has overcome silence to become strong. Show people that it's not selfish to stand your ground. It is a matter of survival. And occasionally, it marks the start of something even more exquisite than you could have ever dreamed. Have you ever had to put your needs ahead of those of your family? Leave a comment below with your tale. Remember to like and subscribe if this spoke to you. Your encouragement keeps these tales alive.